Hi everyone! Today I want to talk about some pretty important theory crafting topic, which is attack speed breakpoints and attack speed caps. So even if you're not making your own builds and just follow along, sometimes you may be wondering why are certain choices made over others, why is this a thing and not that? And I want to shed some light on this and how it works, because a lot of people don't really seem aware of this. But it's actually very important to know in order to not waste your materials or your items or just the roles that you can have on your gear, basically. So what you need to know about attack speed is that there are attack speed caps in the game. In fact, there's two separate attack speed bonus caps of 100% each. This means you can have a total of 300% attack speed if you max out both bonus caps. You can get 100% base, 100% from one, and 100% from the other. Now, what goes into each of those caps? Well, that is the finest spaghetti code, as always. It is pretty random, to be fair. Some people call the first cap also the gear attack speed cap and the other one the aspect cap. But ultimately, it's kind of like a mix and match between any kind of effects. And we have a table here, and you always have to go back and refer to this table here. So this was shared to me, I think, originally by Ava, but there are some other people that have contributed to this and tested these mechanics in the past, and it has been expanded. And now we have pretty much all of the different attack speed effects that exist in the game in this sheet here. A few things are missing, especially the new tempo mods. So I'm not exactly sure in which cap those go necessarily, but there's also not really many builds that want to have those effects right now anyway. But what you see here in this sheet is that we have one column for each of the classes, and we have two fields here with cap 1 and cap 2 effects. So again, cap 1 can go to 100% and cap 2 can go to 100%, and then those get added together, and this is a total attack speed bonus. Now, what you see here is that the first cap has the so-called gear attack speed, so you can have all of the affixes on your items. So we have like a glove roll, a ring roll, and so on. And for example, on, let's say, the rogue here, we have flurry. If you use combo and flurry, that's 45% attack speed. The elixir, the advantage elixir, for example, that goes here. This is the same for every class. So if one effect is in one of those caps, it will be the same for all of the classes. It's just that certain classes also have class-specific effects here. So close quarters combat, for example, funny enough, one of the effects of close quarters combat gives you 15% in cap 1, and the other one gives you 15% in cap 2. So that is a really weird case here, for example. And there's more stuff like that when you look at this table here. So this is all kind of just listed here. Paragon nodes also go into cap 1, for example. So the gear, the paragons, and a bunch of these legendary aspects. Artillery Shrine also just kind of like straight up makes you cap out in cap 1, for example, and these kind of things. And then we have cap 2, and cap 2 has generally most of the like legendary node effects from paragons, for example, or it has like legendary aspect effects. So one example here is accelerating, that goes into cap 2. We have the rapid aspect for basic attacks that goes into cap 2. And we also have like certain other like skill effects here. So for the swords, we have unstable currents there. And for the barbs, we have like, frenzy there, and carnage legendary node. And for the druids, we have the blood hole there, and so on. But this is not always the case, so it's not really like a real rule of thumb, because if you look at this, for example, on the swords, we also have the ancient flame aspect that increases your attack speed massively. But this is cap 1. This goes into the first cap again, and not into the second cap where we have the other aspects. So this is why you kind of have to learn these, or you have to like always go back and refer to this table. I will link this in the description, by the way, so that you can also check it for yourself. But what is important is that, especially for cap 1, it is pretty easy to go above the 100% and just kind of like lose out on a lot of value. So for example, right now I'm playing Andariel's Rogue, and Andariel's Rogue has Flurry with the 45% attack speed, and it has Andariel's itself, which can have like 20+% attack speed. So you get pretty close to the cap already, just kind of like existing. And then you can not actually roll attack speed on your gear, because it will just be completely wasted. If you have those effects already, you get pretty close to the cap. And then I have other stuff that, like for example, the elixir as well. I'm already just like at 80% by default, basically, just playing the game. And if you have like one aspect, let's say like a Moonrise here, which kind of fits pretty well into the Andariel's Rogue, well, you're already at 100% in cap 1. But you can still go for more from the cap 2. So in this case, my Andariel's Rogue, I have a rapid aspect, and that gives me another 30%. and then I have a total of 130% bonus. But I cannot get any more from this like top row basically. Personally, I think this is quite a mess and this should not work that way, but this is what we got. I'm not sure if this is even intended because of how random everything is, like especially this close quarters combat example leads me to believe that this is just like spaghetti code basically, because you have one of the two effects of the same key passive in cap 1 and the other one in cap 2, which seems to be completely like bonkers basically. But this is how it works. So this is how the game functions. This has been tested, verified, and yeah, this is what we got for now. Maybe it's going to be addressed in the future. I certainly would like to have, you know, one kind of like easy, simple to understand attack speed bonus cap. You know, maybe just like combine it both into one and go to 200%, or you know, maybe like 150 or something. You know, something a bit more reasonable than whatever this is basically. Either way, when you're making your builds, then there's another thing to consider for your attack speeds, and that is breakpoints. So what are breakpoints? Well, you have to understand that the game runs at certain frames per second. This is usually 60, and the server also runs at 60 frames per second. And an action can only always happen at a full frame. So basically every second is divided into 60 little parts, and only on a full frame you can achieve a certain result. So what this means in practice is that when you stack up attack speed, you can have very minuscule changes in your attack speed. You can get like 1% more, you know, from like a masterwork upgrade or from like a paragon node or something like that. But this 1% more attack speed does not actually necessarily lead to more DPS, because there are these breakpoints. You have to have like a certain breakpoint or a certain attack speed value to hit a certain frame breakpoint for an attack. And you can see this here in this attack speed mechanics post written by the one and only Ava, which you have here. This is like a new post if you want to dive more into all of the details of what I'm explaining currently. But basically we have certain like attack speed breakpoints for every single skill in the game. And here are some tables that have been slowly built up. The difficulty with this is that the game functions in a very unintuitive way, and we only have like approximative formulas for these attack speed breakpoints, and only after testing them excruciatingly, like one by one, you know, adding 1% attack speed, attacking a bunch of times, adding 1% attack speed, attacking again, and basically doing this 100 times per skill in order to test the actual breakpoints. But some of these tables have been created already, so you can see this here. We have some data for some of these skills, and for example, if you have rapid fire and you have one APS on your weapon, like with a bit of attack speed, like a very little bonus, you have like a crossbow that starts at 0.9 and you have, let's say, 12% bonus, you're gonna get roughly to this value, and then you're gonna have 60 frames breakpoint. This means that you'll need 60 frames to execute one attack of rapid fire under those circumstances, which is exactly one attack per second. So in that case, that kind of checks out, and those kind of match most of the time, but the exact breakpoints are sometimes pretty far apart and can lead to scenarios where you roll attack speed on, let's say, a ring, and you get literally nothing out of it because you don't hit the next breakpoint. So especially once you have a lot of attack speed, this becomes more and more common, because the breakpoints get larger and larger in how much attack speed you have to add in order to reach the next breakpoint. You can see this pretty clearly here if you look at, let's say, Blade Shift. Blade Shift is a pretty fast attacking skill, and it has, let's say, at 1.1 attacks per second, it has a 19 frames breakpoint. So this means that you'll attack roughly 3 times per second with Blade Shift at that point. And well, if you start stacking attack speed, and let's say you go to the 8 frames breakpoint at 2.7 attacks per second, well, it has 8 frames. So this is actually more like 7 attacks per second or so. This is because certain skills have different starting at points, basically. They have different base attack speed. Blade Shift is a very fast hitting skill, and Rapid Fire is a very slow hitting skill, because Rapid Fire, you press it and then you shoot 5 arrows at once, and it has like a really long animation, and the animation length for each skill is different, basically. And Blade Shift is a very fast one. So even though it says 2.7 APS here, it is actually way more than that because of this base speed coefficient that the skill has. But you can see here, for example, if you start adding more attack speed in order to hit the next breakpoint, if you want to go from, let's say, 8 to 7 frames breakpoint, which will give you 60 divided by 8 is 7.5 attacks per second. and then 60 divided by 7 is 8.5 attacks. So this will be 1 extra attack per second in this case, which is a gain of roughly 14% DPS basically. You would have to stack a lot of attack speed here. You have to go from 2.7 attacks per second to 3.2 in order to actually hit that next breakpoint. And anything in between is just kind of lost value. If you're at 2.8, 2.9, 3.0, if you start any attack speed and you don't hit 3.2, you get nothing out of it. And this is kind of why those breakpoints are so important. Now, what does this mean in practice? Well, I mentioned the attack speed caps, which are just kind of like really weird and probably bugged, which hopefully get addressed. And maybe that will happen at some point, hopefully. But the attack speed breakpoints, like this stuff here, this can basically never change because this is just a fundamental feature of how games work, basically, with frame breakpoints. So this means that at least for frame breakpoints, you always have to check it. And we can only hope that maybe we're going to get some actual working formula that kind of like functions for all skills properly. Because right now, people have been like testing this and trying to, build those formulas. And you see here, they're like really strange. And they're different for every single skill as well, with like slightly different values. You see here, there's like different values that like are attached to each of those. So it's kind of messy, to be honest. If you want to like get any kind of like rule of thumb or anything like that, you always have to go and like refer back to the breakpoint table in order to understand how much attack speed you actually want to stack if you want to get a benefit out of it. Now, in practice, this means that not necessarily everyone has to go and start doing these calculations or look at this table. This is kind of like for like more try hard min-maxing, I would say, and something that, well, you can leave to, for example, build makers to do. On the other hand, we don't even have the data for all of the skills. So we have Rogue, which is like the most explored class, I guess. We have almost all of the breakpoint tables here for all of the skills. But yeah, a lot of the stuff is still missing. We don't really have the data. People are slowly building those tables, and it's painful, to say the least, to do that. So this will take a while until this is actually figured out and we have better approximations. So a lot of classes and a lot of builds cannot even refer to any kind of breakpoint tables right now anyway. But it means that when you build your characters, you can at least respect those attack speed caps. And occasionally you might run the situation where, okay, maybe you have like 5% or 10% attack speed somewhere that doesn't actually do anything, especially if you have a lot of it. And in that case, okay, you might unknowingly not benefit from like a certain roll on your gear or a masterwork crit on an attack speed roll or something like that. But so be it. It can be usually not really the biggest deal, and it's kind of fine. But at the very least, it is important to respect those attack speed caps here in this sheet. So whenever you make a setup, you should always double check, okay, am I actually above 100% in cap 1, especially cap 1, I guess, because that's way easier to cap out than cap 2. There's not really many builds that can really do that in terms of the cap 2 capping out, but at least cap 1 is pretty easy to reach these days and always worth to take a look here. Either way, this sums it up for what you need to know about attack speed. If you want to read more, then I really recommend you to go check out this post here. I will have this linked in the description as well, along with the sheet, so you can read up more on the details, or maybe you didn't really quite understand something that I was explaining in this video. We have everything here written out with a lot of detail. So there's a lot of pretty nice information in this article by Ava. So check it out. Hope you enjoyed this video, hope this helps you, and see you guys next time.